Now, drunk driving versus drug driving. What is the issue here? Okay? This is directly a quote. Drug driving is a growing problem in the United States because there's no national standard to measure the level of drug impairment. Detecting drug-impaired drivers is not easy. Some states have drug per se laws that forbid any presence of a prohibited substance or drug in the driver's body while operating a vehicle. Most states also train enforcement officials to help them identify drug-impaired driving. The Governor's Highway Safety Association supports elevating drug driving to a national priority, okay? Pat Barone and I were talking a few years ago, and he says, Maze, the future in DUI is not in alcohol. It's in drugs. And he's right. You are going to see a wave of these things, of these drug drivers. And I mean, people are not taking more drugs today than they were 10 years ago, but all of a sudden we've got this mysterious drug recognition expert and what we'll talk about in a moment, the A-Ride program. Now, you know all that we changed the drunk driving statute earlier this last summer here to include impairing substances. Ooh. This was not particularly innovative on behalf of the state legislature. Frankly, this has been adopted in several states, and it's problematic. North Carolina is one of the states that has an impairing substances. Now, the reason why we amended the statute is to include things like huffing. Okay, this is a great story because it's only a few days old. This is out in Livingston County. Driver crashes, admits to huffing. Michigan state troopers arrested a 24-year-old Clarkston man while checking him for injuries. The driver advised the troopers that he had passed out while traveling in the parking lot before he struck the curb in a fire hydrant. Down here at the bottom, troopers located 18 cans of compressed gas duster. This is the stuff you clean your computer keyboard off, and he's going to huff this stuff and drive around. Why? Normally, what they would have done in the past is do a reckless driving on something like that, but now with the new impairing substances, they can actually charge this guy with drunk driving. Under the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, a drug is any substance that, when taken into the human body, can impair the ability of the person to operate a motor vehicle safely. This definition excludes some substances that physicians consider to be drugs. This definition includes some substances that physicians don't think of as drugs. Huh? What? All right, well, let's go to Michigan. Maybe Michigan makes a little bit more sense. No. Michigan says that everything that a doctor considers to be a drug is a drug, and everything that we also want to consider to be an impairing substance is a drug. And many of the drugs that don't have any impairing effect on a person's ability to operate a motor vehicle, a person can still be charged with operating while intoxicated. I've included here a reference to the Board of Pharmacy. I know that this is next to impossible for people to find. You look onto the schedule that's contained in the statutory language and you're like, gosh, I know that this thing's a drug, but this list is only so long. The Board of Pharmacy has an extensive list of controlled substances that are contained in the administrative rules. And I got the site there for you. You can't find it, just look this PowerPoint thing up on the CAP Seminar webpage. Now, don't we want certain people to take their drugs before driving? All right? Do we? I mean, the narcoleptic driver, do we want that person falling asleep? Doesn't the person put themselves at risk of being arrested by mere fact that they're taking their medication to keep them awake to make them a safe driver? And then we've got all these cancer patients, all right? Statistically, we've just got a bunch of people out there that do have cancer. They've always been there. And these people are simply managing their pain, okay? We talk about tolerance when we talk about drinking alcohol, but we also need to address tolerance when it comes to these drugs. This quote down here is from a toxicologist. He says, William, there are people driving around that have so much of morphine in their system that when we measure it, that is a fatal dose to most people. And in this particular person's instance, it's only barely managing their pain. Now, we've got to back up a little bit and talk about drunk driving just in general. There is a new National Highway Traffic Safety Administration manual. This one's from 2006. It's the most recent edition until just a few weeks ago. A few weeks ago when they released the March edition from 2013. March didn't get released until November, which is curious. And what they've done is they've taken all the good stuff that's contained in this book here that's all, very written out verbosely and changed it all for pictures because they figure that police officers identify with pictures more easily than they do written words. The first chapter is extremely long and it's all about drugs. And this is stuff that's on par with what a DRE is learning. They use all sorts of fancy language and terms that a normal police officer is not going to understand, not going to be able to pronounce, and yet the opening chapter is all about this. It's curious. What they're trying to do is they're trying to break these officers into the idea of thinking about these things so that they'll go on to the A-RIDE program and go on to the DRE program.